Today on CityCast Denver, hundreds of migrants from Central and South America are arriving in Denver every day. And Mayor Hancock says we need help. So what's happening? Where are these folks coming from? And what can we do? Denver Post reporter Seja Hindi has the story. Today is Monday, May 22nd. I'm Bree Davies, and here's what Denver's talking about. Seja Hindi, welcome to CityCast Denver.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here finally.
I know. We've been talking about having you on for a long time, but you've been covering a situation that we've wanted to actually talk about for quite a while. But I want to start kind of with the current situation, which means we're actually going to start by talking about Venezuela. What is happening in Venezuela?
You know, as I was kind of preparing for this interview, I was like, I hope they don't ask me too many details about Venezuela because it is a complex situation.
Yeah, totally. Like high level, just like I would love to know, like, I think listeners are probably like, what's going on that is pushing folks to Colorado of all places?
Yeah. So, you know, a lot of the asylum seekers that we talked to who had left Venezuela were talking about economic conditions that were really forcing them out. And while this has been an issue that they've been facing for years, there's also been a lot more violence lately, and that has put a lot of families at risk. Some of the people we spoke to also talked about how if they protested the government, or even the president, they could end up being jailed, or they could end up being harmed or killed. And so a lot of people are just really trying to find ways to do better for their families. There's a lot of turmoil politically, economically. One of the people we interviewed at the migrant shelter a few weeks ago had been saying that, you know, she was working 10 to 12-hour days every day, and she might make the equivalent of $10 a month. And that wasn't enough to support herself and her young daughter. And she was also supporting some other family members. And so it's really been a struggle for people. And that's why they're risking leaving.
That's incredible. I mean, I'm just thinking about being in a crisis situation, having to leave where you live, traveling to find somewhere safe, and then having to work along the way. It's just, I think it's unfathomable to most of us.
Absolutely.
And I know you talked to quite a few folks that are in this situation right now. I was wondering, you talked to a gentleman named Jeremy Jimenez. Can you tell me his story?
Yeah, absolutely. So Jeremy was one of the people that we talked to at the Migrant Processing Center at the time. It was at the Auraria campus. And he was telling us just kind of his treacherous journey, right? He going through multiple countries. He eventually made it to El Paso and was able to get a bus ticket to Denver. His ultimate goal is to go to Chicago, where he knows people. But he was still very optimistic and positive when he was talking to us. And that really stood out to me, because I feel like after you go through such a journey, it might be easy to be down and to be distraught. Like he said, he didn't know anybody in the US, aside from this one person in Chicago. None of his family members are in the country, but he's looking to find a way to make a better life for himself. He's a 22-year-old who just left on his own and met people along the way.
So I'm just thinking about the political climate here for folks like him, like in Texas. Mm-hmm. I mean, coming through a border town like El Paso, and Governor Greg Abbott has not been welcoming to folks like Jeremy. So can you tell me how people are getting from Texas to Colorado?
Yeah, so Texas is obviously one of the border towns that's seeing a ton of people come in, whether they're planning to stay in Texas or are just stopping in Texas. A lot of the people that were ending up in Denver from El Paso weren't necessarily coming as part of an organized group, but they would hear from other people like, oh, it's fairly easy to get to Denver with, a $90 ticket from El Paso, Texas. And then you can stop there until your next destination. But El Paso is seeing a lot of people, and Governor Abbott wants the federal government to secure the border and basically not allow this kind of influx. And so in his statement yesterday, he said, we're going to continue sending migrants to so-called sanctuary cities where Democratic leaders have said, okay, your states are welcoming, therefore we're going to send people there, which further exacerbates the problem in places like Denver.
And that's just what Governor Abbott did this week, right? He sent another busload of folks to Denver. Is that how Jeremy got here?
Jeremy was actually part of another group that had come. I had asked him how he arrived, and he said, that I just saw some other migrants who were headed to Denver. I wanted to make it to Chicago, and so they recommended I come here. Governor Abbott had the state of Texas had sent a bus of migrants, about 41 of them yesterday. And a lot of them were already planning to be in Denver or in Colorado at least, I think it was 9 people who already had family members who were settled in the Denver metro area. And so they were coming to meet up with them. Other people had immigration appointments in Denver, so it made sense for them to be here. And I asked Mayor Hancock about that yesterday, because if they were already planning to be here, does that make a difference for Denver and the systems that are already currently set up? And he said it might not make a difference in terms of whether they would have made it to Denver, but this is a lot more about just politics and making a statement. He called it an act of buffoonery.
Something struck me in your reporting, and something that you've mentioned a couple of times, is Denver's not folks' destination. It's sort of a way station on the way. But why are so many folks coming to Denver in the first place?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's something that, people have a lot of theories about. There's not one specific answer. Some of the people we spoke to said it was easy to get to Denver from El Paso because the bus tickets were there. Other people said, we've heard that Denver and Colorado are welcoming to immigrants. And so we knew that we'd be able to go there, stay and be safe for a little bit until we get to our final destination. Other people have come and said, that I could see myself settling in Denver or Colorado, but my immigration appointment is in another state. So I'm going to go there and then kind of figure out where I find work and move on from there. So I think there are a lot of factors that play into it. Some of the migrants we were talking to actually were joking about how the people that first arrived in December and January were saying, oh no, we don't want to stay in Denver. It's too cold here.
Sure.
But now that the weather is nicer, maybe they would change their minds. So, I think it's a lot of factors. I think what the state and the city have done in terms of passing laws and ordinances that are more welcoming to immigrants, or at least are not cooperative with federal immigration in terms of civil immigration enforcement, have made people feel a little safer coming to Denver.
This episode is brought to you by Uhler's Garden. Did you know you can buy fresh, locally grown greens from an organic farm right on South Broadway? Uhler's Garden is a hydroponic container farm specializing in living lettuce. That's right. When you order from Uhler's, their lettuce heads come with the roots intact, meaning your greens are picked fresh and will last longer. Uhler's uses 95% less water than the average farm and is all organic. No pesticides or chemicals here, so you don't even have to worry about washing your greens. Sign up for their Farm Share program now and pick up a box of fresh lettuce, arugula, and basil every Tuesday, June through August. Think global, but act local and support your local environmentally friendly farm today. Visit uhlersgarden.com for more information. That's ULLRS garden.com. This episode is brought to you by Bad Boy Boards. Based right here in Denver, Bad Boy Boards takes raw hardwood and turns it into world-class cutting boards, charcuterie boards, chess boards, and more. It's a local brand with high quality and great prices, which is great because home chefs like me don't have to settle for anything less than simple elegance in world-class quality hardwood boards and dust covers. They also make gifting customizable and super easy. Oh, and this is super cool. If you stop by Bad Boy Boards, you can watch a live stream of the manufacturing floor so you can actually see your cutting board being made. Seriously, it's so cool. It's like if Willy Wonka made cutting boards. Learn more and order your own individually designed, constructed, and finished board at badboyboards.com. I know that you reported that Denver has received over 9,000 migrants and asylum seekers since December. I mean, overall, beyond this situation with Texas's governor, how has Hancock and the city responded?
Yeah, and actually, since that story came out, Denver has seen more than 10,000 people at this
Oh,
point
wow.
since December. So it's grown quite a bit in the latest surge. Denver is kind of responding as if this is an emergency situation. I mean, it obviously is. They weren't initially expecting this many people. The numbers went down significantly in March and April, where only 20 to 30 people were showing up per day. And then it went back up to more than 100 per day. And so that's a pretty significant increase. Some of the shelter spaces had already been closed because there weren't as many people coming in. Nonprofit advocacy groups have been saying, we've been warning the city for a long time that this is going to happen. It's going to continue to happen. There's a crisis in Venezuela. It's not going to get easier, but they're worried that there's no long-term planning and coordination. Mayor Hancock says, Denver and most, or if not all cities, are really not set up for this. This is a federal government responsibility. And so they're responding in ways that they can, but ultimately the city needs more resources and more help to be able to move forward.
There's something else that has popped up in the news related to this conversation, and it's about something called Title 42.
Mm-hmm.
And Title 42 is expiring this month. Sasha, what is Title 42 and what does it have to do with this immigration and asylum seeking situation?
Mm-hmm. So Title 42 ended earlier this month. And basically it was a COVID era immigration policy where people were coming to the border and because of public safety reasons, is what the administration had said, they were being sent back to other countries if they hadn't already sought asylum somewhere else, or they were being sent back to Mexico, or they were allowed in if they had applied already and were trying to get in, but they couldn't just get asylum at the border. So that ended, which meant that a lot more people would be potentially coming in. The Biden administration has since put in some more rules related to asylum to sort of try to curb those numbers. But either way, nonprofits have said that it's still too early to see the full effects of that. And that's because these journeys for people take months and months. And so you're not going to see like, okay, this is the end. And now a bunch of people are in the US the next day.
And you've mentioned this, but nonprofits that work on this issue every day are saying, wait, Denver, don't close up shop on these sort of extra resources we've created for folks because more people are going to be coming. And they've talked about more folks coming even into next month. Do you know what we should be expecting?
I think it's hard to say exactly how many people are going to be continuing to Denver or for how much longer. But the crisis in Venezuela and surrounding countries is ongoing. And so Denver and other parts of the country can expect to see migrants continuing to seek asylum, which, to clarify, is a legal process. People are allowed to do that. And so, that's going to continue. I don't think that it seems like there's going to be a very quick end in sight to that. The other side of the issue is that cities like Denver say that they have stretched their resources to capacity. They can't continue to use tax dollars to fund something that should be a federal responsibility, and they're going to run out of emergency funding. And so that's going to be an issue where we don't know what will happen. People will continue to come in, but, Denver's already facing a crisis with homelessness. And so the mayor said, obviously, we don't want to add to that with migrants coming in who don't have places to stay. But at the same time, we have to figure out how we can fund all of these things. And so they're asking for more money from the federal government and asking, frankly, for action from Congress to figure out better ways for immigration reform and paths to citizenship.
Denver cannot continue to financially shoulder this burden alone. Our reserves are not bottomless, and if this situation extends for a prolonged period of time, some hard choices are going to have to be made.
So I'm thinking about listeners who are hearing about this or really understanding for the first time maybe the magnitude of the situation. What are some ways that folks can help?
Yeah. So, I mean, the city of Denver is accepting monetary donations. The Rose Community Foundation is also accepting donations, and then they disperse a lot of that funding as grants to nonprofits or other groups that are working to help migrants and assist in that way. There's also going to be some physical donation sites for clothes and things that the migrants need specifically that will be set up, and you can also get that information from the Denver city's website. And other than that, nonprofits are just asking for anybody who may be willing to volunteer their services or help out to contact them and see how they can help.
Well, Sasha Hindi, thank you so much for explaining this.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on and chatting about it. It's obviously a very important issue in a lot of different cities in the country.
And here's what else Denverites are talking about. Those weird dioramas of indigenous people at the Denver Museum of Nature and Science. The museum announced that it will be closing its North American Indian Cultures Hall over the summer to remove them. According to the Denver Post, the hall opened in 1978, and the DMNS says it did make updates over the years after consulting with indigenous community leaders. As far as we know, the dioramas are still on view, but the museum has posted what it calls a healing statement for visitors, acknowledging how the dioramas, quote, perpetuate racist stereotypes. We'll share a link to the full statement in the show notes. And finally, has anyone else tried to sign their kids up for swimming lessons lately? Apparently, Denver Parks and Rec's aquatics program is now our city's hottest club with a miles-long waiting list. It probably has a lot to do with the continuing lifeguard shortage, which in recent years has shortened the summer swim season. Axios reports that Parks and Rec is short about 60 lifeguards, even though they raised the pay to $17.29 an hour. Anecdotally, though, I know the In-N-Out in Lakewood starts at $19 an hour, so if I was a teen, I know where I'd be working this summer. That's all for today here on CityCast Denver. If you enjoyed the show, why not take a minute to tell Governor Greg Abbott about us? Rate the show wherever you get your podcasts and subscribe to our morning newsletter, Hey Denver, by texting Denver to 66866. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. See you later. It's like holding a burp, that whole sentence.